Hello, and welcome to another episode of Speak, Film, and Enter, a podcast where we review and rank movies. I'm Nate.
And I'm Dylan.
And I'm Adam.
And today we are reviewing the bloody new revenge Viking
Thriller.
picture
Epic.
from Epic. Yes.
Film.
Any other
Movie.
Bring them on.
Yes.
Cinematic experience.
Yes.
Timeless tale of
Historical
vengeance
fiction adventure.
and wrath
From
and the
Robert
sins of man. All right.
It's the Northman, if you didn't know already. That's the
Yeah,
movie we're
yeah.
describing.
Mm-hmm.
Before we get too far into that, I just want to let you guys know all that jazz right back here. Don't forget to like and subscribe us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, or how it will eventually be known as Elon's Twitter. Don't forget to ding the bell so you get notifications for when we post new content. Find us wherever you get your podcasts, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything like that.
There we go. And that's fitting because Vikings loved jazz. Everyone knows that.
They're
Adam, what
famous
would we do without
archers
you?
of jazz.
But yeah, for anyone who hasn't heard of the Northman or just wants to be reminded of what it's about, Adam, do you want to tell people?
Yes.
Yeah.
Prince Amleth is on the verge of becoming a man when his father is brutally murdered by his uncle, who kidnaps the boy's mother. 2 decades later, Amleth is now a Viking who's on a mission to save his mother, kill his uncle, and avenge his father.
Yeah.
That's pretty much it. It's a very
straightforward.
straightforward plot. It doesn't diverge from that literally ever.
Mhm.
Nope.
Also, this will be a spoiler review because
Yes, it will be.
we want it to be. And I think the ending is worth talking about and like a lot of the themes. And I think it's one of those movies where once you know how it ends, kind of going back and thinking about how well did they set that up
Mhm.
and kind of what it makes, like the meaning that it gives everything that came before it. I think that'll be interesting to talk about. So I think
Yeah.
spoilers for this movie will make this conversation a lot more interesting.
And also, it seems like a lot of people are going to see this. So,
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it made like $12 million its opening weekend, which on a $90 million budget is not
not
great.
great.
But
But I'm seeing
I mean,
a lot of, I think a lot of movie
Yes.
people are seeing it.
this feels to me like a movie that's going to kind of like really have new life breathed into it whenever it lands on streaming somewhere.
Probably.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see
Like it's
that.
going to be like if it goes on Netflix, it'll be at their #1 for like 3 weeks. Or like
Yeah.
everybody's all of a sudden watching The Northman. Well, we saw it in the theater, which I would recommend doing. This movie looks amazing.
Me too, yeah. Great theater experience. I guess, yeah, should we just dive into what works?
Yeah, I think so.
So we shall.
Okay. Definitely one of the things that works, I think, is just visually, everything visual with this movie. That's why we said you should go see it in theaters. Just the sets and just everything, like the
Makeup,
dream sequences, the makeup, the colors. When they do use maybe a little bit of CGI, like some of the ocean stuff, I don't know. It was just all working for me. I just think that it really is worth seeing it in theaters, and like maybe since like The Green Knight or Dune is one of the more visually stunning movies I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, you can also really feel the mud.
Yes, and the
from
grime,
the theater. Yeah,
the blood,
and the dirt and the gunk, all of it.
yeah, a lot of gunk back
the
then.
sweat and the blood, and I was just gonna
Yeah. Yeah, that's kind of where I was going.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. This movie is technically brilliant from purely technical perspective. I think it's probably the most impressive movie I've seen in 2022 so far.
I think that's fair.
I feel pretty comfortable saying that, actually. I mean, there's a tracking shot with a raid scene that featured heavily in the trailer and the marketing of this movie, where, I mean, that's surprisingly kind of like really the only scene of the movie where we get like the long hair, like all abs shot.
Yeah, like him just going nuts.
That featured so heavily in the marketing that I was surprised that like he cut his hair like 25 minutes into the movie.
Same. I wish he had kept it. He looked better with it.
Well, he didn't look like enough of a slave, I think.
Yeah.
He needed to blend in. But yeah, that tracking scene, I mean, just those are so hard to do because usually when we see cool tracking shots, it's just like following a person or two, but
Mhm.
this is like a tracking shot of a battle
Yeah, like the
or
entire
a slaughter,
siege.
really.
Yeah,
But they're
of this
fighting, and
small
so
village.
there are so many people on screen where it all has to be choreographed so perfectly. I
Mhm.
just thought that was really, really impressive. And yeah, like the camera work, there were some scenes that reminded me of what David Lowery did with The Green Knight, where we got
Definitely.
like some of those more supernatural scenes where like the camera would kind of like spin or like go over the top and you'd see one thing and then it would kind of like do a 180 or a 360 and all of a sudden it would be like, wait, did that like really happen or was that in his head?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
what's really going on there? I thought a lot of that was really cool. And like you
Mhm.
said, like the costumes, the set design, and it's also authentic. Like, I mean, I was reading about how authentic he made this movie. Like he made sure they had the right kinds of wood for like the
Yeah, dude.
housing and like just all that stuff. And like that one shot of the Valkyrie where it kind of looks like she has braces.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I read they did like teeth tattoos or like teeth carvings.
Yeah.
And like that's
Wicked.
what that was. And I guess we meaning like humanity only learned about the existence of that in history like 5 years ago.
Dang.
Oh, damn.
So maybe that's what inspired this movie. He was like, I need to make a movie with teeth tattoos.
Finally. Yeah, no, the attention to detail is unreal, just like it is in The Witch, another period
And The
piece from
Lighthouse.
Eggers, and The Lighthouse. I mean, it's just the dialogue, like every little thing. It's a commitment to authenticity, which really kind of adds to the whole experience. It was part of the reason why why we were so excited to see this. I think I had this number 1 on my most anticipated list. I think you guys might have had it near the top.
It was in my top like 5 or 6 for sure.
Yeah, it was up there.
And that's because Eggers brings it. He's masterful.
He brings it, and look at the talent on screen. Like, I mean, we'll get to
That
performances later, but there's so many people in this movie that was just like, oh yeah, I'll go see it because of that person. Oh, I'll go see it because of that person. This person's in it.
A $90 million budget for
Yeah.
a guy like Eggers, whose last movie was, The Lighthouse, super artsy, 2 guys in a shack on an island for 2 hours. Like,
yeah. How do you guys think this worked as far as, because you see it's kind of an interesting combination of, on one hand, you have trailers that make it look kind of like Gladiator, like a big Ridley Scott like blockbuster epic, but then on the other hand, it's made by like one of the, like, if you're holding them up, like auteurs and like kind of unique, weird, like singular vision filmmakers.
Not commercial.
That we have right now, like very artsy and strange. I thought it did a really good job of balancing both. I will say the movie didn't have as many like quote unquote battles
action
as
sequences.
I think some people might expect. That's not to say it's not bloody as all hell, because it is. But it's a lot of like killing one guy when sneaking around sometimes, or like
or a handful of guys,
right?
Trying to do it stealthily.
We don't have 2 sets of people lining up, except in possibly the coolest sport ever created.
Oh yeah, awesome!
It's like
I'm sure that was
hockey
authentic,
mixed with lacrosse, mixed with football, American
It was
football
like-
with like rugby. It's like,
It was like
just beat 'em.
lacrosse, ground Quidditch, with like
Field hockey
rugby
for the
and
uninitiated.
polo mixed in. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I loved how like there were no subs when somebody like maybe died.
You just die.
Just kept playing.
Yeah.
That was cool. I was just very like, wait, there's a sports scene in the Northman?
In the
This
Northman,
movie in the 9th century in Iceland has a sports scene in it.
And it's awesome.
I enjoyed the hell out of that scene. I thought it was fantastic. That definitely falls for me under what works.
For sure. I also loved the volcano showdown at the end, just because that visually and just like that's so epic. That's right up there. It reminds me of the end of Star Wars Episode 3.
Oh, sure, like visually.
Yeah.
Yeah, not dialogue wise.
No, not quite.
Brother Anakin. Wait, what?
Yeah,
You were supposed to be the chosen one.
I'm sorry. That caught me off guard. I was not expecting anybody today to compare the Northman to anything
Star
with
Wars.
Hayden Christensen in it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well,
it took me. I get it though. Like visually, yes, with the lava and the fight and everything. I like how kind of symbolically it just takes, like, his journey took him straight to hell, essentially. And that's kind of the thing that I wanted to get into for what works for me, is just like how thematically rich this movie is. Leaving it, I wasn't sure how I felt about it. I enjoyed it, but kind of to what degree. And I found myself just thinking about it for like still. I mean, we saw this like 3 days ago.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking about it a lot since then.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is based on the same story that Hamlet was based on. So, I mean, if you've read Hamlet or aware of the story, or like The Lion King, it's pretty similar. But there are just so many things that Eggers does in this movie, whether it's like kind of the commentary on like how the characters feel about religion, or just the nature of vengeance and like masculinity, and like immortalizing yourself in like the halls of Valhalla, and like how important that is. And he does this in The Witch and The Lighthouse as well, where he sort of just like meshes fantasy and reality to make it seem that like the magic and the fantasy is real. And that really made me think about how, I mean, I'm not a religious person. I was raised one. I'm just not anymore. But it did make me wonder how I would view the world if, to me, it was just factually true. You know, like the characters in this movie, I feel like it's safe to say that like saying they have faith is not the correct way to put it, because it's just the way that it is, and it's real for them. And we see that it looks real sometimes, but with the camera tricks, he kind of lets the audience wonder, like, is that just in his head? Is it real? But when it's all real to them, of course it's in his head, but like it's the same thing. And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot since I saw this movie, with like he's pursuing his fate, and to him there is like literally no other choice.
Yeah.
And it's what's helped him survive since he had to flee, but it's also what's going to lead him straight to the fiery hell that will be his end.
Yeah.
And I find that fascinating from like a religious perspective, because he has options toward the end of this movie of just like having a really nice new life.
Yep.
With Anya Taylor-Joy, which I think most of us we'd take that, right? That
no,
none of us here would complain about that as like that, or you know, sword fight in a volcano. I'm
to the
personally
death. To the
death. Right. Personally,
no matter who wins, you'll probably both die. Like
but I don't know. That was one of the things that really stuck with me and has made me think about this movie for so long. And I'm still trying to decide how effective I think that is. But I think it automatically for me reaches a certain level of effectiveness, just given how much it stuck with me.
Yeah, and I think just real quick, Adam, I think that like that scene at the end, that scene towards the end when he does decide to not stay with Anya Taylor-Joy and he jumps off the boat, for that to have any real weight and be believable, they had to show us, like you said, how much he believes in the whole, you know, fate and glory, and he doesn't want to be dishonored in the tree of kings of his family name. So he literally has to jump off. He has to. It's not
like there's
no
there's no greater sin for him or failure than like failing to live up to this like level of manliness that seems to be required of that society, and that his father like instilled in him with like the kind of the animalistic tendencies too. Like that's something that I found really interesting as well.
Oh yeah,
he basically swore an oath at the beginning of the movie to his dad, like if you die, like I will avenge you, like in whatever fashion. And like clearly it's like 20-ish years later and he's still on the journey to avenge his father. So like there isn't a choice. He's got to do it.
Yeah, and I just wanted to say another scene I liked, or that I've since some time has gone since I've seen the movie, I've come to appreciate more, is the scene when towards the beginning when him and those other kind of just raiders, like they do like the wolf thing and they do that kind of ritual around the fire like the night before the raid. Like that's just another detail that adds to the thematic layers that you were talking about that didn't need to be there. We could have totally just had him and the other guys, you know, they're just eating around the fire, and it could just do the typical, like he's running with some bad dudes, you know, and it could have totally done just a lazy, like, oh, what is he doing here? He's better than this. But instead they show us this like ritual that has, so it's like kind of gives us a taste for their religion and how in their mind, what they're doing is like, has a purpose, and it's you know, about this transformation from a beast to a man, and like I don't know,
or the other direction. I mean,
vice versa.
I took that as, and this could be totally wrong, but the way that I interpreted kind of those, I mean, he does that with his dad too, where they're like barking and howling and drinking from like a dog bowl.
Yeah,
and there are lots of scenes and moments in this movie where he's like comparing like man to beast, and like exploring our animalistic or like most bare bones tendencies. And to me, like, people talk about how revenge is like one of the oldest stories and most used that we have in storytelling. And I kind of took that to be his way of like calling out to that of like, yeah, we're going back to our roots here. Where like, this is something that has been going on forever, even back to when we were much more animalistic than we are now. Like, revenge brings out the most like animalistic tendencies in us.
Hateful,
and hateful tendencies. And to continue on that path, you are going to dehumanize yourself in some ways.
A quick aside, I know you talked about the religious portion of this movie. If our listeners or watchers or you haven't watched the show Vikings, that show explores.
I haven't watched that yet.
It explores that concept to like, that's basically what the whole show is about. I've only watched the first 2 seasons, and it does it in obviously a more nuanced way. It's got a lot more time to deal with. It's a TV show, but definitely check that out. That's in the same vein. If you liked how this movie approached that or how it tackled that issue, Vikings I believe it's on Hulu right now, is a great show to also check out. And it's, it's the same time period. It's the same.
Right.
There's more recognizable names for the, the layman, but check that out.
Nice.
All right. Should we move on to maybe some things that we think didn't work?
Yeah.
Indeed. Anything that made you angry that it didn't work?
What was that, Dylan?
I like that new picture for the what doesn't work segment.
Yes, for those listening, it's a picture of anger from Inside Out.
I think we should just, from now, when we make references to visual things, let's just purposely leave the audio crowd out. Let's just, can be a running thing. Continue.
So for me, there were a couple things that didn't work. Although, like I said, I've thought about it more, and this movie is sitting better with me, like, as I get more removed from it. Even like the ending, I think, kind of bothered me right away, where I was really hoping that only he would die. But I still think that fits with the themes. I think it would have been maybe a little bit cooler, but like, whatever. It works, definitely. It's not a flaw in the movie. But I did feel like some of the characters felt a little one-dimensional for me. And that's, I think that's natural when, I mean, he just has one purpose. Like, the main character in this is like barely even a person. And that's kind of the point of the stories. But I did struggle to connect to him at times. This sort of flips once you get kind of the reveal and the wonderful scene with Nicole Kidman with his mom. That all kind of flips at that point, which is why, but I really want to watch this again because I think I'd like it more. But for right now, all I can do is go back and say what didn't work for me while I was watching the movie. I did struggle to connect to some of the characters, and I really wish the first act had been longer. I would have liked to see like a little bit of more him as a kid, and or I should say, or more of him as like a raiding, like
badass.
a raider, basically.
Barbarian.
Before embarking on like pretending to be a slave and hiding in there, because that felt like a quick turn where there was like a 5-minute stretch where we were like kind of told that he's sort of stopped pursuing that, and then he meets a witch and she reminds him to, and then he brands himself and then finds out that these people are being sold to his uncle, and then he's just on his way. And there was like a big, like, lots of twists and turns that just led us to where we thought we were already going anyway. And I thought the pacing and the structure of kind of that was a little off.
It felt a little strange that we got to his uncle's place so quickly in the movie. Like, it just, because you think epic revenge story, it's going to be a long journey for him to get there, and
something
instead,
more like Gladiator, where like
or the Revenant, or any classic revenge, Django or whatever.
Inigo Montoya, where it takes forever to find the guy.
His whole life, actually.
But instead it's like, he actually gets there pretty quick, and now he has to be like sneaky revenge Viking. And then for a while, we're just like in the village where he's can't do anything about it, and he needs to convince him that he's a slave. But the whole time, it's like, dude, your uncle's like within reach. Like, and it felt a little strange. And then I will agree, Nate, that the scene with Nicole Kidman and that turn and that reveal definitely adds more to all of like what his character was up to that point. Like, I feel like if I see it again, I'm going to appreciate where he was at beforehand. Cause up until that point on first watch, I kind of was like with you, I'm like, okay, so I get he wants revenge, but like
it just all felt
who
too
is he?
straightforward, right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But then we reached to that point, and I was just like, oh, this is a story this is like a tragedy and about somebody who's like maybe on the wrong path.
He's maybe the villain in this story.
So I have a question. I'd like you guys to explain that scene, because as it happened, like our audio went weird, and there was an old guy sitting next to me, and he was like, "So wait, is that like his sister?" And I was like, "Shut up! Like I can't hear." So I missed
audio in the theater went weird.
Like it was just quiet, and then this guy started talking to me, and I was like, "I don't fucking know. Like just let me listen to the movie."
Oh,
he was just asking me questions in the middle of it, and I was like, "All right, well now I kind of miss what's going on."
Okay,
like,
so and this is good that this is a spoiler review, so we can just
Yes.
kind of rehash like the pivotal scene, in my opinion, in this movie.
And I was like, okay, cool. So the rest of the movie, I was
basically, she explained that her husband, Ethan Hawke, was actually just like a rapist, slaving, marauding asshole.
And that she was a slave. And
that
he
she
was raped her and then took her. Yeah.
Okay, so but is that Ethan Hawke was the king, or he was just a random fucker? Okay.
No, he was the king, but she was his slave. She got pregnant via like from rape. And then like that's who Amleth is.
Gotcha.
And so she knew, so she made a deal with
his brother,
and like killing Amleth was part of the deal, and she said okay.
Gotcha.
Like as long as that gets me away from Ethan Hawke and my husband, then like do it. So she like doesn't care that he's still alive. I mean, she's surprised that he's still alive, but she's just kind of like, dude, I gave you up entirely. So like you are wrong about everything. And she also says like, I actually love him. I hated your father.
Gotcha. Yeah. So that's what I thought I was getting from that scene. But with old man next to me, I was like, I missed like a couple words and it changed a little bit. And I was like, all right, well, I think I know where that's going, but I'm not 100% sure. So I just spent the rest of the movie like, all right, well, we're going. And it lost meaning for me.
That's too bad.
Yeah, because it was just like,
because that's the moment that the movie like shot up for me.
Completely changes. Yeah.
And it also adds another. I was thinking about this too. How in the very beginning, when he's a kid and he's running to tell his mom that his dad just got back, and he like barges in, and she's like, "Never open my door without permission." It's like, now we see why. Yeah, you were up to some treachery.
Also, just I think that like it didn't feel like she liked him very much.
Yeah,
and that makes more sense too.
Mm-hmm.
That's why, like I say, I just really want to watch this again. I think I'll like this a lot more on a second viewing now that I've had time to kind of let it sit and feel like I understand what it's trying to say.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, those were kind of the two things that while I was watching it felt a little off to me.
Yeah. So let's move on to the performances and what you guys thought of our incredible cast. I'll read off some of the
run it down.
If my page is on the right spot. Come on. So, starting off, we have obviously Alexander Skarsgard as Amleth, Nicole Kidman as Queen Gudrun, his mother. We've got Ethan Hawke as his father, Anya Taylor-Joy, Olga of the Birch Forest, the witch he meets.
What a character name!
Yeah, Olga of the Birch Forest.
Yeah,
well, and that's why at the end
awesome.
when she's like calls the wind, she says, "I will bring forth birch trees," essentially, and like the wind starts.
Yeah.
Willem Dafoe as I'm not going to pronounce this right. Hymir the Fool, and a cast of other people you might recognize, but a Bjork, obviously.
Claes Bang is the uncle. He's the other guy that plays a very prominent role.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. Yeah. Fjolnir the Brotherless.
Yes. I also thought it was really interesting how like he just lost his kingdom like right away. And,
yeah,
like,
I thought that was kind of funny.
Like by the time Amleth gets to him, he's like kind of already paid for his sins.
Yeah.
You know, like he had everything taken away from him, and he's just like a lowly farmer.
He's like a
island.
He's a sheep farmer who's like the leader of that sheep farming community, but definitely not as powerful as he was.
No, he's like a small town mayor.
Yeah, exactly. He's a small town mayor.
He's like Pete Buttigieg instead of like that's who he's been relegated to be.
Oh God.
Which also adds kind of another interesting dynamic to like, is our main character here really the villain? Because like from right away, it's like, dude, he already is being punished for his, like he's already lost pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Like, so again, you really don't
not
need
his life.
There's no
like, what are you going to gain?
There's no throne to reclaim.
Right. Yeah, like it's already been taken. Go kill that guy.
The birthright that he like the kingdom is lost. He can't win that back.
No,
but I wanted to just highlight right away what I thought to me the best performance in the movie was, which was Nicole Kidman. I thought,
hard to argue against.
I mean,
that.
it takes a while for her to kind of like rise to the forefront.
Mhm.
She's just kind of in the background for the first like 2/3 of the movie. But once we get that scene, Adam, that we were just talking about, with that sort of reveal where you kind of like it just reframes everything that's happened before.
Yeah,
I think she's brilliant in that scene. She's like screen time wise, probably like 4th in this movie, behind Claes Bang. I don't know how to pronounce his name exactly, but that can't be too far.
Clay
off.
Bang. Maybe the S is silent. Clay Bang.
I don't know. Or
I'll
is
look it up. I'll see if we can.
Yeah, I don't know.
Can figure it out.
But behind him, and obviously
update you.
Alexander Skarsgård and Anya Taylor-Joy. But then Nicole Kidman she's in it a good amount, like a lot. But she doesn't have, especially early in the movie, she's just kind of, like I said, just like in the background and kind of there.
Yeah, and like when he first shows up at the village, there's a lot of kind of like we see her from afar, and we see like how she's interacting with like her quote unquote new family. Yeah, and that's kind of, so.
And he can't approach her without like blowing his cover, so it makes sense why she's not in like a lot of speaking big scenes until the end of the movie. But once she just blew me away.
No, I agree. I think that she kind of stole the whole show in that one scene from Skarsgård, because I mean he does a fantastic job, and he's obviously on screen a ton and a lot of brutal, physical acting, as well as like he's great in it. But in that one scene,
hunched shoulders.
She kind of seizes like the high watermark in the movie for acting, like in that scene. And yeah, I was really blown away by that. And then Willem Dafoe is a good classic Willem Dafoe side role. It seems like he's really been kind of collecting these in high-profile movies lately.
I mean, he was one of the leads in The Lighthouse, but he's super weird. And then like his role in Nightmare Alley was like kind of a strange like carnival barker.
Yeah.
Kind of guy, and then
Man
like
or beast.
Yeah.
I know, but I thought it was cool, the creepy scene with the shaman or whatever, when that was great. He has his head and it's kind of like his voice.
That was a cool scene. I like that scene.
That was awesome.
That one scene with like Brendan Gleeson.
Yeah. Towards the end.
It's not towards the end. It's like in the middle of the movie, like when he's trying to get the sword that he must kill his uncle with. He's like the sort of he's like inherited the witchy powers from Willem Dafoe.
Oh yeah.
And then we get that bonkers scene where he fights like a skeleton.
Yes, like a Skyrim.
That reminded me so much of the Green Knight.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was really happy that like when that popped off and the dude comes alive, I'm like, yes, I love that they're taking this direction right now. Like they've already introduced enough supernatural elements where this is totally like within the realm of the world they've created. Like I love it.
Yeah,
it was fun.
But yeah, those performances were all great. Anya Taylor-Joy, it was cool to see her with Eggers again, because that was like her big breakout was The Witch. That was before anybody knew who she was, and now she's just like she's probably the biggest star in this movie, from just like a slap her face on a poster and get people to go to the movie. Like I think she would be number one probably.
I think that's fair. Yeah, she was great as well.
I'd agree.
But yeah, I just wanted to make sure we touched on Nicole Kidman because she just blew me away completely.
Yeah, she was.
I was impressed with. I know we just kind of got done talking about it, but I was impressed with Anya Taylor-Joy's like accent and the whole like she really changed. I feel like for this role, it was more of like it was more like dedicated to like actually being like speaking old. I mean, she's been with Eggers before, and he dedicates his movies to being a very, like, time specific piece, and you have to follow the the customs or the dialogue of those eras. And
dialect,
she nailed it. Yeah, whatever. She nailed it. I thought that was that was great.
I agree.
I will say there were certain points where the accent especially for Skarsgård himself kind of lost me, or there were certain points where it sounded a little weird to me. I mean, that's a really nitpicky, but I will say the accent didn't necessarily work for me all the time for all the characters.
I remember you saying that when we got out of it. There were also a few moments, just as I think of it, where like it felt like the score like kind of changed tone and felt really strange to me a couple of times, where it like all of a sudden got really light in a scene that didn't feel light. I'd be curious to just like hear somebody's opinion who's like much more well educated on like how movie scores work and like the process behind creating them and like what the purpose of that might be. Because
Or if
just as a viewer, I just felt like there was kind of a shift where I was just like, oh, this music feels like it's kind of trying to make me feel happier, but what I'm watching is not.
Or if the rest
not very
of it
often.
was
It happened like once or twice.
Or if all of it was like based on like authentic music from the time, or like which way, you know what I mean? Like, because everything else in this movie is like spot on as far as like the authenticity or the looking like it. If it's
a lot of war
like
drums.
Yeah. A lot of the beating of the shield with your sword to make a beat or something. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All
right. Want to
right.
get into who this is for?
Yeah.
Clearly us right here on screen just going, I don't know.
I'll go ahead and say, if you really liked The Revenant, I think you'll like this.
Mm-hmm.
That's interesting because I fucking hate that movie.
But I actually think there's a lot of similarities.
I mean,
it's personally, especially the opening
straightforward revenge story.
And the opening like battle scene is similar to the opening raid scene in The Revenant. One long shot with a lot of crazy shit going on, and our main character kind of in the heart of it. So I think if you like that, you'll definitely like it. I think if you like epics just in general, you know, Braveheart, Gladiator, period piece epics that center around kind of a personal vendetta, I mean, it's just definitely going to scratch that itch.
I will build off that though and say, if they're like diehard Eggers fans, don't let that make you think it's too mainstream or he didn't bring the strange.
Yeah, I was just gonna say.
Definitely does. Like it's I think it's a really good balance of like appealing to like a larger audience with kind of the epic nature of it, with still having some of that just weird shit that he's become known for and does very, very well.
Yep. All right. Should we get to the
stars?
Oh, and obviously, if you watch and like the show Vikings, I feel like you're probably gonna like the movie.
Yeah. That seems like a given, but yeah, worth mentioning.
Yeah.
We'll be right back with our stars. And we're back.
All right. So I can go first.
Why don't you go first, Nate?
Yeah, I'll go first. Is that cool with you guys if I go first?
Yeah. And I'll go second if you go first.
Okay, I'll go first. I am going to give this movie a 3.5 out of 5, which for me is like a good above average movie. Like it's bordering on a 4 for me. And as we talked about it during this episode, it's still going up in my mind. I'm like very close to a 4, but like I said, I didn't feel a lot of that while I was watching it. A lot of these positive feelings have come after I've looked back and felt like, ooh, I think that actually really worked. So I do think if I rewatch this, it will almost certainly go up to at least a 4.
Yeah.
But I do need to sit on a 3.5 for my first viewing. Yeah, I mean, that's 3.5 for me. It's really good. I really liked it. And I really look forward to watching it again.
All right.
Nice.
You go next, Adam.
Yeah, I'll go second. I'll go next.
Adam, you go second.
Nate, should I go next or should it be Dylan?
Well, Nate went first.
Only if Dylan goes third.
Okay. I'll go second. I had a different experience with this movie based on what I talked about when that old guy next to me.
Damn him. Sounds like you should go on your own quest of vengeance against that guy.
Should find him, track him down.
Just get really ripped and show up at his house. Your hair's almost long enough already.
I know. I could probably just like let the beard grow.
The Boorman.
The Boorman.
And you hunt down that guy who ruined the movie for you. Oh my god, what a
just
great
carry a hatchet with me and like run through the woods.
What a great small budget film idea. All right.
Oh my god. Yeah, can we make that like a short film and submit it to like the Minneapolis Film Festival for next year?
Yes, let's do it. I'll keep the hair long. I'll grow the beard out. So obviously that guy was a detraction because that was like one of the pivotal moments of the movie. But I walked in this knowing obviously Robert Eggers and his repertoire or his style, and then looking at some of the previews of like it looks like a big epic, it looks like there's going to be a lot of battles or at least like some really good action, and this is going to be some nitpicky stuff just because I got because the turn of the movie didn't hit me as hard as it should have. I started to get bored in the second half. I was like, all right, this is taking forever. This movie's 2 hours and 17 minutes long, and the first act felt like it took 30 minutes, and I was like, just let's get there, right? The beginning, the whole first half of the movie, when after he becomes, he's grown up, he catches a spear in the first shot we get, and he turns around and throws it through a guy, like
the guy who threw it
away. Like unfucking believable.
Yeah.
And that's like as badass as he gets, and it goes downhill from there, unfortunately. I think the second half, like towards when he actually confronts his uncle, he like lets himself get beat up right there and then gets tortured. And then like moving into that, he just like when he fights Nicole Kidman, she like slices his arm, and he basically if he's this badass, like that probably necessarily shouldn't have happened. And then the kid stabs him like 14 times in the back. And it was just like, dude, just get him off of you. Like, you are a fucking Hulk. Like, move his ass.
I mean, I do think he did not want to kill either of them.
Probably, but
I think they kind of forced his hand.
If she slices your arm wide open, like, slice that. Like, you really gotta.
Wow. Easy.
Listen, this is not even medieval times. It's older than that. Like, there is. It's English. The Vikings. There's no hold bars. That's the only reason I brought it up. So just little stuff like that, like, was bothering me. I was getting bored towards the end. Like, not that I didn't enjoy what was happening on screen, but I was just like, there's no emotional tug right now because I missed the turn. So I would like to see this again. I'd like to get it like with fresher eyes. I thought the visuals were fantastic. I really enjoyed the acting. I love the era. It was just okay. Unfortunately, I walked out going, well, that was not what I expected, and it was okay. So 3 for me.
All right. I guess that leaves me, and it's interesting because I felt kind of the way you felt, Adam, right when I walked out of the theater. I mean, Nate, we saw this together, and when I walked out of the theater, I was thinking 3.5 and maybe even 3, because I just felt like, God, the characters were kind of one note, and it kind of was a little more like just simple than I thought. And like, some of the other things we've talked about. However, now that I'm more removed from it, I'm starting to think that I was just disappointed that it wasn't what I expected. And I think that it actually was a lot smarter and a lot more layers than I was giving it credit for. And that's probably just because I hadn't wrapped my head around the implications of that Nicole Kidman scene and the ending. And, right when we walked out, me and Nate both agreed, like, man, I thought it was going to end with just him dying. And that would have been like perfect and made this much more tragic. And like, I was kind of bummed that it didn't go that route, but also like, it's based on Hamlet. It's based on this other story, and that's what happens. So, I mean,
everyone dies at the end of Hamlet.
Yeah. I think
also love the scene where they die.
It was a faithful retelling and reimagining. And the more I think about it, I think about the positive stuff and how visually stunning it was and how cool all the little details were. And it gave us an idea of like religion and spirituality in this time, and just really made that come to life. And it's just so bold that I feel like I'll definitely like it even more on rewatch. And I gotta give it props. So I'm gonna give it a solid 4 stars. Wow. I was thinking, like I said, it kind of went from 3.5, and then it's just kept going up and up. And then definitely just talking about it today cemented that. So still maybe not perfect. And again, I think this was my most anticipated movie of the year. So I was hoping like 5-star slam dunk.
Right.
So I don't
I had
think
high expectations too.
At least right now, I don't view it as that level like masterpiece. I mean, I have The Witch in my top 50 movies ever, and I don't think that it reached that level, but still epic, awesome, bloody, vengeance-filled fun. And I think it'll go up on rewatch, but solid 4 for now. So really, really good movie.
All right. So that's a 3.5 from Nate. Nate looks frozen, by the way. No, he's back. A 3.5 from Nate, a 3 from me, and a 4 from Dylan.
Indeed. Was there anything else we wanted to say, or should I put a wrap on the show?
Wrap it up.
Take it away.
All right. You have a great name. He must kill your name before he kills you.